Well, hello, Andre.
Hi. How are you?
Nice to see you.
Yeah, how are
And
you?
Marilyn Krieger. Hello, Marilyn.
Hi there.
Nice to see you too.
Good to
And
see you.
Andre is with us. Are you in Kyiv or where, Andre?
Yeah, in Kiev, yeah.
You're not loud enough. What's the matter?
In Kiev. I'll put my headphones on.
Actually, you're lots of times you're not loud enough. I don't know what, I mean, chronically, I have to do something to sort of pump your audio up after I'm through. And I don't know why.
I have a question. Is there a way of putting captionings on, even though they're not absolutely accurate, but they may help a little bit, the live captioning?
Hello? Is this
Yes,
better?
You mean the names? The names of the people or what?
When you set up the Zoom call, I think you can, I'm not sure, but I think you can enable captioning.
I don't, well, let me look into it next time, but I don't know how now.
Okay.
And it captioning meaning live where it's producing words that is supposed to be what you've said, right?
Correct. Yeah. So it's on the very bottom, it'll say, now it's not always super accurate, but it gives you an idea of what is being said.
Yeah, right. It's not always accurate at all, but okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll see what I can do, but not now. Hello, Peter.
Hello,
Peter.
hi, Rachel.
Yes, good to see you. How's everything in Turin?
Fine, thanks. Yes, I've been getting ready to go to Sardinia for some field work.
You are going to South India?
No, Sardinia. Not
Where?
Sardinia. It's
You're not saying South India. You're saying something
no,
else.
I'm saying Sardinia, an island in the Mediterranean.
South India. I'm afraid I don't know. I have to look it up. Okay. Is this going to be your vacation?
No, it's a working trip where
There's no ice there. There's no ice. I can tell you pretty sure.
no, but there's a lot of brush fires, so we're looking
Oh,
at
I see.
how to do away with brush fires.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll find out more. Look, there are a lot of folks here now. Hello, Alexei Prokhorenko.
Hello.
How are
Hello.
you? And here's Bill Lycum, the Fox guy. And we already have Andrei Kamenchikov and Marilyn Krieger. And I see that Jai Jagat is here, so it must be Jill. Let's see if I can find her. Oh, there you are. Yeah, okay, you're here. Good, it's good to see you. In fact, maybe I'll put this all on gallery so we can see each other. Where are you, Jill? In New York still?
I'm excuse me, Norfolk, Connecticut at the moment. Yep.
Oh, because Jill has been traveling a lot. She lives in South India, and you went to Tbilisi, Georgia, and then to New York, and now you're in Connecticut, right?
Yeah, Yerevan as well.
Oh, Yerevan, yes. Okay. Well, look, let's get busy and hear about this. Why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about your recent travels? I know what we're going to talk about mostly this time. We can all guess what we're going to speculate about. What the hell is going on in Russia? But anyway, why don't you start us off, Jill, by
Sure.
giving us what you've learned in your travels in the Caucasus?
Yeah, so I spent about a week, so not a long time, but I really saw how this war is impacting the post-Soviet spaces like Georgia and Armenia. And when I say that, I mean, I'm just writing an article actually, which I'll give for Peace Magazine. But, there's one whole line of thinking in Armenia that the Nagorno-Karabakh, Second Nagorno-Karabakh War, known as the Second Karabakh War, in September 2020 was kind of a a particular event which led to certain consequences that Russia, just before the special invasion, so-called, he made a pact with Aliyev. So the Second Karabakh War enabled Russia to line itself up with Azerbaijan as opposed to the democracy-seeking Armenia, who was slowly moving western to the west. There's Iraklis. He's, I think, joined, has he? So because Russia was backing Azerbaijan, they made a pact the day before the 24th of February, so 23rd of February, 2022, that enabled...
Hold on. Who made a pact with whom?
So Russia and Azerbaijan made a pact, forgotten the name of the pact, one day before the start of the war, which enabled Azerbaijan to feel like it had Russia behind it in its expansionism, and there's ongoing skirmishes into Armenia, and Azerbaijan and Turkey have got together, which is strange because Russia used to be on a different side, but they made a pact, and what we could see is they were, according to them, they were using Azerbaijan and, of course, to some extent, Georgia, to knowing that sanctions may be put on them for the war, that it became an alternate route to bring cash and weapons and so on. When you travel through Georgia as well, a second point, there is just cargo going through Georgia, using Georgia as a place, again, to bring all sorts of things to Russia. And the flight that was established between Russia and Georgia is not so much bringing people, but bringing money and goods and so-called defense equipment and so on. So as a result, Russia has, even though it's very diverted in the conflict, it is very much heavy-handed in these societies, these two fledgling democracies of Georgia and Armenia, who are Western-leaning, to use their Russian people inside those countries, which are many, because there's a wide swath of different political views, to kind of carry out all sorts of dirty deeds. And so it's impacting on that region in a very negative way. And I think what Armenia wanted me to communicate to this audience and to any audience was, for goodness sake, please don't just myopically focus on Ukraine, because we're also dealing with real problems. And we feel we're part of Europe too. So this was the kind of the message that I got, but it was fascinating to see, and I think I spoke to many different political groups of all stripes, and I've written it up, and I'll send it, a portion of it, to Peace Magazine. But yeah,
I
that
wish
was
we
just
had
a
it a
small
little sooner, because
introduction.
we can't get it in this issue.
Okay,
The July issue is ready to go.
okay. So the
Good.
next issue, yeah.
Either that,
thought it
or
was important to
it
get
sounds
it
like
out.
it's something ought to get into print quickly, in which
Yep.
case the best we could do is have you put it on the website.
Yeah.
And then we could try to publicize the website.
Yeah.
In fact, I could squeeze in a little ad saying, to see Jill's analysis, go to this
Yeah,
number.
sure.
We could do it that way. Okay.
Yeah, I'll
Because
send
there's
it
not
to you in
room for a
another
whole
day or
lot.
two. I want my Armenian friends and Georgian friends to see it before it's finalized. So
Well,
just
now I'm hearing you put, am I right in understanding you as somehow seeing Georgia and Armenia in something like the same predicament, or not?
yes, something of the same predicament, correct. I think there's more at the moment, strangely, there's more democratic process going on, and it appears, in Armenia than Georgia, because as you know, or may know, that Nikol Pashinyan, who is the president, has been trying to get rid of the corruption. The corruption. And so Georgia, however, still has a Bezina as the main oligarch that's influencing the government. And he comes from the oil and gas, Russian background. So he's an oligarch. So I'm just going to let you talk while I answer the phone. It seems
So
to be.
listen, I think our friend Irakli Kakabadze is going to be joining us. So we'll get another
Yes.
view from,
Yes.
it will be very different, I think, from yours, but another view from Georgia, which will be interesting. But in the meantime, go ahead and answer your phone, and I'll talk to one of these other guys. Where's Andre? Andre, you're in the hot spot. Well, it's not as hot as Rostov right now, I guess. Anyway, tell us about what the view is from Kyiv.
Well, on the latest events, I probably shouldn't speak so much about the view from Kyiv, because from the Ukrainian perspective, it's quite obvious. If there's a major conflict in the camp of your enemy, let's hope that both sides win simultaneously. That's the but if we speak about Russia, I will start to give you some historical. There was a very interesting historical precedent more than 100 years ago, in 1917, during the time when the monarchy was overthrown, and there was a so-called interim government that was hoping, at least in words, to build a normal democratic society in Russia. Things weren't going very well, and there was a case where the official commander of the military, without probably its communications there, of course, then weren't as well as they are now, but he did something that people saw as a coup, trying to sending military forces to St. Petersburg, that was the capital of the time. And Kerensky, who was the head of the government at the time, said that this was a coup and had to turn to the very left to resist this coup attempt. So the coup didn't succeed. But as a result, the radical left got in a very strong position and very soon overthrew the interim government, and that's how the Bolshevik and communist government came to power in Russia for many years. And I can't watching the latest events, I can't resist seeing some historical analogies in what is happening today. The difference, though, is that previously you did have a political system where there were different political parties, where people truly believed in certain ideas and people were ideologically motivated. In Russia today, you don't really have people ideologically motivated, neither the government nor the who went against the government. And but what for me happened is this is the first obvious sign, I think, of a coming very rough period in Russian history again, that might even include a total collapse of the government system. We don't know. Maybe that won't happen, but it's like, it's one of these warnings that we see Russia again on this historical track to a very serious collapse and some kind of transformation at the best, if not a complete collapse as a state. So that is my take on what we saw over the last few days. And the other thing that is interesting is that what was demonstrated is that really, if the leadership of the Wagner Group would really focus on, taking
Which
power in
group?
Moscow, the Wagner Group that was
Oh, Wagner Group, yeah, okay.
yeah, if they really wanted, I think their chances of winning and going into Moscow and basically, organizing, making the coup a successful coup, were very high. And why they didn't achieve their goal is probably because they were not that motivated themselves initially, and also their leader, Mr. Prigozhin, of course, is a thug himself, and he's not a person that is a political leader with any particular agenda except for his own safety and his own interest. So he was playing these words, these populist words about restoring justice and so forth, but in reality, of course, he himself didn't give a damn about all this. I mean, this is a guy that is known for his criminal record, is known for all kinds of terrible things that his group has done. Killing people, with a sledgehammer and all that stuff. So he's certainly not. He as a populist, he felt that there is a that people will respond either neutrally or positively to a populace that starts speaking about, starts saying nice words and, speaking about restoring justice in the country and, kicking the asses of the, oligarchs in the Kremlin and all that crap.
But there were, in Rostov, apparently, I mean, at least where a lot of people went out to the street and, they looked really enthusiastic.
That's
So-
exactly what I'm saying. That what this showed is that, the country is ripe for change. If you have a leader that doesn't back off and you have a military force of, relative size to what the Wagner Group is, I mean, they estimate that they had about 25,000 people, and if you have a military force of the similar size, anything can happen. They weren't
Well,
probably.
I mean, is it really because he had a military force, or is it really that they just are people wanted something different? I mean, it's an interesting reflection on Putin's so-called popularity. I mean, everybody says he's got 80% of the population behind him, but they didn't look very enthusiastic.
For anyone that has any senses, this was the nail in the coffin of this concept of Putin's popularity. There's no one in his right mind can speak today about Putin's popularity. And even today in some of the Telegram channels, people were making fun of the fact that where are all these, demonstrations in support of our government, our president, and all that. There wasn't actually any sizable protest. When the Russian military moved into Ukraine, there was lots of nonviolent resistance as the military was advancing, not just the Ukrainian military resistance, but also people set up roadblocks, tried to speak to the troops, tried to stop them, slowed them down. In some cases, they were able to protect their towns without violence from, allowing the troops to enter the towns for days, so, you could see all this starting the first day of the Russian advance. And here you have a military force going, about, I don't know, 600 miles is, the distance. I mean, they went like 2/3 at least, if not more, the road from Rostov. Well, first they go to Rostov. Rostov is one of the largest cities, has like 1.5 million inhabitants. They take control of the city. It's next to the border for Ukraine, so it wasn't
But now
so long for them.
would there be any reason to think that Rostov was atypical? In other words, because they're so near the Ukraine border
No,
and
no, no,
fighting,
no.
maybe they have more keen are more keen to get out of the war,
No, no.
which
No,
even
no.
There are
Prigozhin
minor
would-
difference, but people, I monitor, the public opinion in Russia to some extent myself, and it's not, you don't see some radical differences between attitudes in Rostov and, Mariel and, St. Petersburg and so forth. So it's not a local thing. There's, if what it shows basically, I can revert to history. In 1917, 105 years ago, then it was during World War One, and when the Russian Revolution happened, that got rid of the royal, got rid of the monarchy. There were all different political parties in Russia, and the parties, the so-called Bolsheviks that were headed by Vladimir Lenin, were a very small marginal group. They had, I think, something like 15 or 17,000 members in the beginning of that year. 9 months later, they grabbed power. Because they were better organized, better motivated. Had a very clever leadership and all that. So what we see is today that Russia in many ways resembles, the situation where if there's a political leader with a strong, with some force, some military force behind him, not gigantic, but dedicated, then anything can happen. And that's been, that's been absolutely clear today. Nobody, what was amazing, that all the state institutions basically failed. Here's this group of mercenaries simply marching, 400 miles marching along the roads, and what do they? Well, in some cases they tried to dig trenches across the roads. They destroyed the pavement and dug trenches. They put up some roadblocks out of trucks or buses, to slow down this column that was marching. So that probably slowed down the column a little bit. It needed time to push
you're
push
talking
around.
about Ukraine when the Russians invaded, right?
No. I'm speaking about what was happening yesterday in Russia.
Really? I didn't hear that. So there was some resistance?
There were attempts to resist, but they were, nobody actually was ready to fight except the Air Force they did have a few planes and helicopters trying to actually attack this column that was moving. And that didn't go well because the column had anti-aircraft batteries, and they actually shot down more Russian aircraft in one day yesterday than Ukrainians were able to shoot down since the beginning of their offensive, in the beginning of this month. So they overmatched Ukrainian military in one day. They in 1 month, Ukraine, I think, shot down 3 or 4 helicopters, and the Wagner group, I think, destroyed like 6 or 7 Russian helicopters and planes during this one day. And that's also, people got killed. I don't know how many people, if any, got killed on the part of the Wagner group, but the pilots were killed and people on the plane. So probably there are at least, a couple of dozen victims. And now, of course, everybody sees that now the Wagner group, as part of the agreement, why they stopped their march on Moscow was that they get a complete amnesty, and Mr. Prigozhin, leaves to Belarus and so forth, and is safe, and so that shows to the entire world that here's where it was a clear attempt of a military coup, and people were killed in a process by this force. And now they're all pardoned, and of course, I think that it's a terrible blow for the government, for Putin, and all that. It's also, I think that Mr. Prigozhin won't last long, physically won't last long after that. I don't know what guarantees he got from Putin or so, but I'm pretty sure that, he'll have a heart attack or die suspiciously in a few months. And
Okay, to me, the question is simple. It looked like he was on the roll, he was about to win, and then he stops. Now, why? That's what I don't get. If he was ready to roll into Moscow and you seem to feel everybody was pretty much in favor of it, or
not everybody,
back to it.
no.
well,
But most people weren't ready, were basically ready to just, we're indifferent to the whole process,
mm,
I mean,
okay, you don't
and-
have an opinion about why. That's
I do. It's very simple. And
What?
it was in one video I just saw on YouTube, just actually like 10 minutes before our meeting. It said it gave it very clear because Prigozhin is just as much a fake as Putin is himself. He's not a political leader himself.
no.
These are unlike, I spoke about historical analogies, but in the difference, the key difference is that political leaders 100 years ago were true political leaders. They have their beliefs. They were ready to
Mhm.
often sacrifice their life. The folks we see today on the scene in Russia are playing games. It was a time of tragedy. Now it's a time of farce. Everybody's acting. Prigozhin is an actor. Putin is an actor. People are acting, and so that's I think the key element. And it's true that the way Prigozhin said, he stopped when it became obvious that they would need to engage in fighting to continue, because obviously there were some units that were ready to resist. It's not that nobody was resisting, and I think there was a defense, line being or some defense positions being set out at the kind of along the Moscow region that Prigozhin his troops probably had to storm, and obviously that would lead to many deaths on both sides, and there would be no way out. And I think at the last moment he just simply, he wasn't ready to go to the end himself, as he claimed he was, and maybe some of the people in his column were also not ready to do that. So that's the way I see it. I'm sorry, I just need to warn that I'll need to disconnect in about 20-25 minutes or so.
Okay, well, let's listen to Alexei.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I just might have to leave the conversation in some 10 minutes. Just it's an urgent thing I have to do.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe do I have to? I don't know. I've spent the whole day today, half of the day today, listening, like working, doing some physical work, and listening to different opinions on the diverging opinions on why Prigozhin stopped and what this might lead to. Let's start with the second point. Every expert says that undoubtedly the attempt at a coup d'etat by Prigozhin or his mutiny, so-called mutiny, will have a profound influence on the system, regardless of his unwillingness to really achieve his goals at the final moment. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he realized that the reality turned out to be harsher than he thought it would be. Maybe as he approached Moscow, he got information on some facts that would render his goals impossible to achieve. But the experts are unanimous in their opinion that it will have a very profound reverberation on Russian political system. It will never be the same again. So the whole image of Putin has been shaken. deeply shaken, profoundly shaken. So as a strong man, as a kind of as a stern leader who can manage everything, who can act harshly. It will never get back there, and maybe people will start forgetting about it in a while, given the flow of news which we are all getting. But I think that in any case, we're about to see some consequences, maybe some remote consequences, because people have to digest it. The elite has to digest the fact that their leader has been unable to handle the situation as he should have should have done, and that's why I think that I have a feeling that this was Act 1, and we are in for Act 2 and maybe Act 3 of the play.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's
I
just
don't
the
think
beginning.
we've even seen what's behind the scenes. I'm interested in, there's some kind of curtain that we haven't penetrated in what's gone on so far, because
No,
it's
sorry.
completely baffling, it seems to me. Yeah, okay.
Expecting
Yeah,
to see the
okay,
least.
who has a thought? I'm sure that everybody has questions or some comments on this topic, and then we'll explore other things. Shall we go back to Jill? Jill, you got interrupted with a phone call or something.
Yeah, so I think this is not the moment to bring in the other states because that's diverts us from the topic.
Mhm. Well, but you may have some thoughts about, everybody's got some questions at least about what's gone
sure.
on the
Sure.
last 2-3 days.
Sure. So yeah, I'm sharing the opinion that Alexei said, which is I think Putin has been weakened, and it's unclear why Prigozhin just gave up he built up the hype and then he just let it all go after talking to the Belarusian president, Lukashenko. So it's very difficult to understand and why they would drop charges. So basically, Putin has tried to do two things that are contradictory at the same time. On the one hand, he wanted to look strong and to defend the motherland or the fatherland, whatever it is, and against a possible mutiny or insurrection. And he really played it up. And to keep the elite or people who want to see him as strong and as a leader with him. So obviously there was some question about his leadership, that he felt the need to do that so strongly. But then on the other hand, he at the same time wanted to let this guy go. He may or may not extinguish him. He may continue to use him. I mean, this is not clear. So there was two contradictory things he had to bring together. And clearly it looks confusing. But my own sense is we need to watch how this Wagner group continues to exist. I mean, there's huge interests in Africa and Mali and Congo and Sudan, and he's a very he's like a pirate. He's making money every day off mines and so on.
To me, the interesting thing was, though, what would he have done about the war? Because on the one hand, he, of course, led the most effective fighting against Ukraine. But on the other hand, he said very nice things about them. And he said, he's acknowledged that, I think verbally, openly, that Putin's motive had nothing to do with NATO, that it was not about protecting Russia from NATO, but something much more human wishing to get ahead and so on. So the fact that he would make such a comment would seem to indicate to me that if he got in power, in another couple of days, he'd call that war over and just get out. But it doesn't square with his reputation as a terrible fighter who was the strongest opponent of Ukraine. I don't know. What do the Ukrainians think, Andre? Andre, are you hearing me?
Yes, yeah, I had some internet issues here. I might have missed part of the discussion, but basically from Ukraine, obviously Ukraine has its own agenda. They're trying to advance. They're trying to liberate their land. Right now, it is true that it seems overall that the Russian resistance to Ukrainians, Ukraine's plans to go on offensive seem to be more, I would say, more significant than they were expected, maybe. But again, I don't know. I mean, the plans, we see that, it's now about a month that Ukraine is, well, a little less of 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks that Ukraine is trying to go on the offensive. And so far, it has achieved something, but, achievements have been very minor, really, basically. So I don't know how that's going to develop over the coming months. But I think that this whole situation, it of course weakens the Russian position significantly.
Actually, there was a hand. Where's the hand gone? Who wants to
I
speak?
see it.
Yeah. Barbara, no, come on. Lena? No. Lida? I'm sorry, I saw a hand, but maybe not. Okay, well then maybe
No, Meta, you did see a hand. It's the friend from
it's me.
Queen's University.
Yeah, it's me.
Right. Yes, there you go.
Just to say that now I'm saying what I read in Greek newspapers. And they say that the reason why Prigozhin trying to go to Moscow is because he was hoping that the Russian army would be on his side. But then this did not happen. This is why he turned around. He did a 180 turn and he left. So he was hoping to get the Russian army on his side. That's what I read.
Okay, that's certainly one point of view. Everybody's got his own. Okay, we've got some newcomers or old comers who are. I'm sorry, are you not through?
Yeah, Prigozhin said that it was just recently, just yesterday, he said that it was not about NATO and all of that. Before that, he was a best friend with Putin.
Yeah.
That's why he fought in Ukraine and all of that. Now, why on earth did he change his mind, or what's going on with this guy? I don't know.
Right, nobody knows.
I don't know what to say.
Okay, so we've got some folks. Ellen Haber is here. Barbara Burkett is here. Robert Reed is here. Peter Wadhams has been here all along, biding his time. Peter, I think you've been patient and you must have things that you want to share. So why don't we let Peter speak next?
Well, I don't really have anything original to say about the Russian-Ukrainian situation.
That's all right. You can say something about something else.
Okay. In fact, all the remarks I've heard have been very intelligent, and so I think that's indicates that people understand sort of what's going on, even though it may lead into insanity, and we will, because most things do these days. So as far as
you bring us up a little bit about what you're going to do in this island in the Mediterranean, because I have you pegged as strictly an ice in the Arctic man, and here you are going to.
The two go together. In fact, we just written a paper which combines the two. The the work we've been doing from Greenland has been taking ice sheet samples of ice and dirt to see to what extent is the climate of the planet being affected by the ice sheet having dirty characteristics. That is, that if you go up onto the Greenland ice sheet, you've got what looks like pristine, clear ice. But in fact, when you look at it more closely, there's a lot of dirt in there, which has been deposited from the air, from the various horrible airborne dirt, which itself gives gives a large change to the amount of energy absorbed by the ice sheet, and in fact leads to the ice sheet melting much faster than normal. So that's one thing going on. But then at the same time, we've been working in Sardinia with major brush fires. In Europe, you're now having brush fires everywhere. There isn't a. It's not a place.
Yes, Canada's had our share and then some.
Oh yeah, yes. Well, Canada's been the big sufferer at the moment, but Europe has been suffering as well, and Sardinia has been one of the chief trouble spots. So we've been working each year for the last 3 years in Sardinia, studying the amount of dirt and gunk that goes into the atmosphere from brush fires, and what that then does to the overall energy balance between what's coming in and what's going out into the ocean. And so we working with brush fires and ice sheets at the same time. And we've been writing papers on this. And
how would you quantify something like that? I mean, somebody's going to want to say, well, how much of a factor is it? So how would you even measure the effect of, let's say, Canadian fires this year on the Greenland ice sheet?
Well, it has been possible to get estimates of that. I mean, it's not when we're thinking about what's causing climate change in the world, then really it's not, the biggest offender is not so much ice sheets in Greenland or burnt up forests in Sardinia. The biggest offender is food. It's the fact that people are eating meat, and that is causing more of an increase in climate change, more of an increase in warming than anything else we can think of. So
now that's fascinating, because if somebody says, I don't believe it, how would you measure it and prove your case?
Well, it is possible to measure, obviously, how much animal food is being eaten, and there's been studies published on food balances and energy balances, and it is looking. And I found that surprising as well when I first read about it, that you sort of think, oh well, somebody comes along and says we should eat less meat, and you sort of think poo that, because especially if you eat meat, and then you actually look at the numbers, and it turns out that it is the case that a large fraction of the energy that's being produced by man is related to eating animal food, and so you get bizarre differences in estimates of what percentage of food is actually causing global change, and it varies from about 20% to about 80%, depending on partly on real observations and partly on the political bias of the people concerned. So, I mean, there are going to be people who say we all have to become completely vegan, otherwise the world will be destroyed by all of the meat that we eat. But others would say, oh, well, it's not really very important at all.
But I mean, you just said what I would have expected, which is the amount of the problem that can be attributed to meat eating varies everything from 20% to 80%. Now, with that kind of variation, I don't think you can make a very strong case for meat eating being more important than black carbon soot dropping out of the sky onto ice in the Arctic. And you're the Arctic man, so why aren't you promoting your own issue?
black gunk dropping out of the sky into your lunch. And well, there's my feelings have changed about this topic over the years, and I feel more that the question of how much meat is being eaten become more important than I thought it was. It's something where we really do have to consider the balance between what we are eating and what we're contributing to global change.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, and now, did I see another hand? Who's got something to share with us? Marilyn, you were here early. I think I should call on you because you've been sitting quietly with your cats. I suppose you must have a cat on your lap.
Well, what I'm doing is really minor compared to what's going on. You know, it just kind of affects a small part of the world. And I'm going to talk about something that Bill, the fox guy, and I are starting to do. We have, I don't know if you're aware of the 30-30 plan that, okay, and it's, I think President Biden was the one that signed into it first, and now our governor Newsom has signed in. And what it is, it's a plan that by 2030, 30% of, I think, the world, and Bill can kind of say more about that, will be wild area. So what's going on in California is that there's a push for that. There are a couple of organizations. One is a Mid-Peninsula Open Space, the other is called Post. But what they're doing is, because they are funded by people, public, the general public, the public wants to be able to get into these open spaces. And our concern is that where these paths and trails are going to be built are going to impact the animals, and it'll cross their corridors and do things like that. So that's something we're getting involved with, to see what is being done about that. We have some meetings that we're setting up. So that's one thing that's that we've been doing. Bill can talk a little more about that too, if you
Why
want.
did you call it, you called it 30-30?
Yeah, it's 30%, right, and it's by 2030. That 30%, I think, of the world will be put back into the wild space,
Yes,
wild
mhm.
area.
That's that new biodiversity treaty, right? That
I'm
they
sorry, excuse me.
just adopt. There's a new treaty on biodiversity that
Right.
has been adopted very recently, in the last couple of months, I think.
Yeah.
And it
So-
calls for 30%. Also, they're calling for 30% of the ocean to be kept, I don't know, wild is not the word for it, but, you know, keep bad things from happening in the about 30% of the ocean. I don't know how they're going to stake off, you know, particular portions of the ocean, but they're going to do it. Yeah. Bill, like, maybe you can help me explain, understand this.
I was just going to say that the 30 by 30, actually, it was Newsom, that our governor, that started it, and it was then picked up by Biden. And what Newsom had planned on doing was that 30% of California would be kept wild. And the other 30% would be, could be developed, you know. But we have a much more serious question facing us. And that is that we are facing the 6th mass extinction. We are in that scene right now. I mean, animals, insects, the whole thing, the whole web of life is coming apart. And it's basically due to our intrusion into the wild spaces. That's part of the reason why Marilyn and I are so concerned with where the pathways are going to go in this new territory that Post and Midpen have opened up. We want them to build responsible trails and not just slap a trail across the countryside so that people can walk. We have to do something. We have to be very, very careful about wild places. Otherwise, we're on the road to extinction ourselves. You know, that is a real possibility. And so looking ahead, I see my grandkids on the verge of having kids themselves. What are they going to live through? That's part of my real concern here.
Mhm. Well, look, where is this spot? Have they carved off a particular piece of the map in California and said this is going to be wild? And if so, are they going to have to undo some civilization that's already been built there, tear down some towns and things like that in order to revert to a wild state? I've not been reading about this. I'm an ex-Californian, but I've been missing a lot, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think, what was I going to say? Sometimes a thought just goes ding.
That's, yes, I have it too.
Yeah.
Okay. But no, let me ask again. Have they made a map showing what 30% of the state is going to be off limits for campers or whatever, or builders?
Okay, so 30, what's happening is that it's going to be off limits to urbanization, to building. A lot of these areas are in corridors. So for instance, there's a certain area where the Santa Cruz Mountains, which is where I am right now, they extend way below, I mean, even into Monterey and up to San Francisco. There's a whole large area and a lot of this land is undeveloped, and it's being bought by the open space groups like the Mid-Peninsula and the Peninsula Open Space Trust. But that's one area so there are specific areas that are, of course, you have the parks, the county, the state parks, the federal parks, all these areas
Mhm.
that are throughout California. But there are other
How much of California is in park land?
ranches too. There are ranches, for instance, there are people that are deciding, I wish more would, they're letting these groups buy their property. So there are individuals that have large acreage that are then donating or letting them be bought. So there's, it's all throughout California. I don't
And-
know if that answered your question.
Yeah, I would say I have never seen a map as such that would section off pieces of California to be barriers to development. But I think probably the state of California already, I would say a third of it is probably already in ranch land, wild spaces, parks, and all of that already.
Mhm.
I don't know that for sure, but Northern California is a pretty wild place up there,
Mhm.
and it's huge. So Southern California, that's another story.
Yeah.
The Los Angeles area, you know.
Oh, yeah, you'd have a hard time getting a little plot of forest in LA. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's encouraging, although I'd like to see a map. And I wonder if they have been trying to make a map, because if they don't actually show it on the map, I don't know how they're going to protect it, you know?
You know, just make it off limits. And one of the things that the two groups that Maryland has been talking about, Post and Mid-Penn, is that when they buy large parcels of land, it's put aside in perpetuity to never be developed.
Mhm. Well, who are the people doing that? Do they go around with a hat collecting pennies and buy this land? I mean, I don't know.
These two organizations are billionaires. They I don't know if they're billionaires, but they have a lot of money.
A lot of money.
And
Yeah.
they're able to afford to buy large tracts of land that they're going to let go wild. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Mhm. Well, sounds good to me. Good for them. I wonder. Okay. I don't think there's anything equivalent to that in Canada, to my knowledge. Barbara, do you know of anything in Canada that we're doing?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
30% of Canadian land is to be protected. Absolutely. And in Nova Scotia, though, they're letting Nova Scotia off with 20% because of the fact that through its history, so much of the land has already been, used for fishing and forestry and so on already. So Nova Scotia is protecting 20, but the rest of Canada will be a little more than 30 because Canada overall 30%, and they're well on the way to doing it.
well, of course they would be, because there's so much of Canada that nobody would ever go in anyway. I mean,
Right. It's easier for them.
go north of Hudson Bay and you won't ever see anybody again, So it's easy to get 30% of Canada.
Yeah. But they are doing that.
But are they saying that each province has to save 30% of its land, or I don't know. I haven't heard that here
Yes,
Barbara,
say Nova Scotia, it's just 20, the agreement's already been made and signed and they're in the process of doing it. Nova Scotia 20, but overall, Canada overall will be 30%.
Okay, Barbara, tell us.
Well, I was just going to comment that there's big controversy in Ontario because the premier wants to build new housing on Greenland.
Mhm.
And so what about areas where the population numbers are rising and housing is short? How do you cope with that?
We go up.
Well, they put it in place in certain areas before that happens to prevent it from happening in those areas.
Uh,
Yes, but you just build on top of what you've got. That's
Yeah.
what, somebody told me that the Ontario Hydro building, which was, it's when I came to Toronto, I think it was being built, beautiful mirrored shape building that they made about 1970 or early 70s. And they're going to put something like 30 more stories on top of it. Yeah, built, it's already what, 10, 15 stories tall. And they're going to put another 30 stories on top of it as a living, condo or something. Well, that's the only solution. Go straight up instead of sideways. And I think that's better anyway, but you do have some problems, when you stack people on top of each other that way. I'm in a high rise and it doesn't bother me a bit. Okay, thank you, Barbara. Anybody else on this?
When I checked in, I think you're just finishing saying some things about the Ukraine situation and Russian situation. I didn't hear any of that, but I would want to interject that I have my own little conspiracy theory about it.
Oh, good. All
That's
right. I like
possible.
conspiracies.
That Putin and this Wagner guy, conflicts and disagreements where they're both are down there fighting against Ukraine in the southeastern part of Ukraine, maybe decided let's the Wagner group display this disagreement, march towards Moscow north, but then come back and this so-called agreement with Belarus and go west into Belarus, but then just keep on going with those 25,000 Wagner troops and just head through Belarus right down on Kiev and catch it and capture it. So a plot to capture Kiev with the Wagner group. How's that? But the disagreements between the Wagner fella and Putin seem so long term and complicated that my theory is probably wrong. But I think that it still could be a plot to do that. The Wagner group just head into Belarus and down those short few miles from Belarus to Kiev.
It has weakened Putin so much that it's hard to see why he would want to do such a thing.
Well, if they swooped down and captured Kyiv from the top suddenly, all the infrastructure for government and managing everything in the Ukraine.
Well, it's okay, but why would they need to have,
southeast?
why would they need to have made this a phony invasion to disguise it? I mean, they could have, I think probably Lukashenko would have allowed Wagner to go into Belarus anyway, and he's not made any objection to
It's disguised for the purpose of surprise.
Okay. Oh, all right. Well, you got a good
I'm sure the president of the Ukraine, his name, they're probably pretty well aware of that and are looking to the northern defense of Kyiv just to make darn sure, just in case the Wagner army's headed that way.
Well, could be. I don't know. Anybody else have an opinion? Alan Haber, you haven't said anything.
Well, I came to hear about the Ukraine and Russia overall, of course, I don't know what's going on at all. Mr. Putin violated international law and human law, made himself a criminal, and sacrificed any moral standing he may have in the world, has blood up to his throat. And then he gets another gang that identifies with Wagner, I assume some German connection there, as they really get a job done, and brings in lots of prisoners to find their freedom that they let die on the Ukrainian battlefield, killing as many Ukrainians as they can. This is completely disgusting. There's no morality to it. There's no reason to what these people are doing, because they are operating to try to advance some benefit in a system that has no actual human value. And it will all come crushing down somehow. The poor Ukrainians are getting caught in the middle of it. And the Americans are glad to keep it all going as long as they can, not only to support our industries, but to support our presumption that we are some hegemon helping the world. Completely disgusting. And I hope that Putin finds his moral degradation so offensive to himself that he just retires. And the other guy, I don't know what will happen to him. This is disgusting. It should be, our talk is how to organize a meeting that brings all the questions to the peace table and calls for clear, immediate ceasefire and stopping of this inhuman carnage. And all the participants are collaborators in it, including our Mr. Biden and our Congress and our so-called progressive Congress people also. They're all voting for more money, for more guns, for more stupidity. Has nothing been learned. But besides that, on the other question of what's going on in the climate and in the larger life system, which this war does not contribute to the health of, I'm every measure I see, except the optimism and the commitment of friends who keep working on these questions, says we are really up a creek. When maybe 40 years ago, I first became aware of climate questions and CO2 and the analysis of the ice cores from previous ice ages.
Excuse me, I want to stop you.
Okay.
I'm having a technical issue here.
Yeah.
And I'm totally baffled, and I want to solve it now, but I don't know how to solve it. It says recording paused, and okay, now we've started the recording again. How long has it been paused? I don't know. Fortunately, I think we're live, so I can go in and get the live, download the live one if it's been for a long time. I just now noticed this, so I'm going to have to edit it and fix it, but I have no idea.
It's okay. My little rant of disgust doesn't have to be recorded, but it's an expression as I see what's going on. This is just too sad. And there's no clear leadership that is coming as either to stop the carnage or whatever. But really what is more on my mind, because I can't do anything on the Ukraine. We have a demonstration every Friday at the Federal Building in Ann Arbor. We get a few supporters and a lot of people honk yes. I hold my usual sign, end the whole war system, and don't escalate, negotiate, and so on, and honk for peace. But what is really, when I hear I think I raised this in an earlier meeting, the analysis of the ocean, the decrease of the protozoa, of the tiny creatures, which are the base of the whole oceanic food system, are so diminished. What they thought would be maybe a 50% diminution over 40 years has become a 90% diminution over 20 years. This is a crisis in the whole ocean system as the base of life for so many people as well as the other creatures. And as I was saying, the look of the ice cores, when we get up to the CO2 levels that we are now, when it happened in the last 10 times or 8 times in the analysis of the ice cores, when you dig down, is at this level of CO2, the climate, the temperatures begin to go up, and then there is a very short transition point, whether it is in decades or in 100 years, very short, when we move into the next ice age and we find a mile of snow, a mile of ice on top of us, even though now it is melting. When we say, where's all the water going? Well, I am working on the solution to all this, that we do need powdered water, but I don't quite have the formula together yet. Powdered water, that's what we need. And because we are just running out of this, the base of the water is life, and it is increasingly polluted and insufficient. That is the challenge to the entire life system. And as long as the political powers keep going for money, and the progressive keep kissing ass to the ruling class to get their little benefits of here and that, we get no actual leverage against the big polluters, against the military, against the oil companies, against all those that are keeping on doing business as usual, because business as usual has made money for many people, and they want to keep doing it. And when we did have a Earth Day program, and there were several people that said, capitalism is the big problem here. If you try and get profit, you're going to exploit, and you're going to steal the resources of the people to make profit. And that is the struggle for the commons since the Magna Carta and long before. It's a struggle still going on. But there is no will among the powers that be to actually share the resources and let the people be more in charge of our stuff. They're all for the money rules. And I remember, I see Andre there in the corner. I remember the great old film, Dinner with Andre. And what was the tagline of that? We are ruled by a totalitarian system, and the governing principle is money.
Yeah, but
nothing has changed.
The problem, my dear friend, is people like it that way. I mean, I have Russian friends who now are saying, I am so ashamed. For the last 20 years, I was perfectly satisfied with having Putin in doing what he was doing. I didn't think it was, and you talk to this day to people in Russia, and they say, I'm not political, I don't have an opinion on this, etc. So if people want it that way, that's the problem. If they don't like it, they can do something about it, but they don't seem to mind. That's the problem. People would like to have a boss, somebody pushing them around and demanding things of them, and ruling them and locking them up. So that's the problem. It's not, I can't blame it on rich people. It's not, it's not, blame it on the rest of us. So there. Anyone want to challenge me?
But I think capitalism is part of the problem, fundamentally.
Well, look here. I mean, if you ever lived in or even visited a communist country, you'd change your mind. I'm sorry, but I spent a lot of time visiting in Russia, and I did before, while it was still even under Brezhnev. So I'm sorry, but there was not solution there. Give me something else you got. What else have you got besides capitalism and communism? I'm looking for something better.
Well, neither of them are doing the job. So we need to create a new system that is not based on war, that is based on recognizing that the past has left us into a terrible predicament, and we need to heal from that, to care for one another, to help one another, and to share the resources that we have. It's a different system, not capitalism, not communism. It's called peace. It's called family. It's called caring for one another.
Mhm.
I'll go for that. How about you, Bill?
Well, one of the things is that by its very nature, capitalism has to continue to grow infinitely. And it can't happen. The planet isn't big enough.
So what happens when you get to the limit? What will happen when capitalism runs into the wall?
Well, we are in it right now. It's the new age. It's called the Pyrocene. The planet is burning. It's a new age. It is the collective consequence of the exploitation and the extrapolation of the resources from the commonwealth to the profit of the few. It is that consequence.
Mhm.
With no approach to deal with the consequences. It'll keep going and things are burning down. Maybe the Pyrocene is not the current name of this age, but if you look at what's going on, it's the planet is burning. And then we'll find the next word for the planet is freezing.
I'm looking for somebody who's got a different theory, a different system.
Get somebody with a positive view. I'm a little grumpy today.
No, I'm grumpier than anybody, but I really am looking for some alternative. And if all we've got is choice between communism and capitalism, we're sunk. And I don't know what else there is. Somebody tell me. Somebody says, well, these guys in Spain, these who are they called? They have a communal system or something. What are they called? Those guys? You know what I'm talking about? Northern Spain. Okay.
It sounds like you're only looking at two choices. And as Alan and Bill are both saying, there's more than two choices. It's not just
Give me a prescription for how to make one other one.
You're talking Spain. The Mondrian cooperatives are a pretty good
That's what I'm looking for.
model. And that's where the workers own the resources that they develop for the benefit of the community, and they share the benefits of that. It is called the commons or a cooperative. It's a very nice old system. Unfortunately, it doesn't make money for the ruling class, and there is such a group somehow, the Intermonetary Monetary Fund and so on, and the World Forum and all that are the billionaires getting together, how they keep on top of the heap. But the heap is collapsing, and it does need people cooperating, mutual aid, a sense of the commons. But there's been a war against the commons since the Magna Carta and long before. I mean, people fight back, but we are not on the winning side of this. So whatever the model is that we are putting forward, whether.
Okay, I'm glad you brought out that word Mondrian. I was trying to think of it because I at one point thought, well, maybe they've got some hot tip on something we could learn from, but I don't really know. And I haven't heard anything about them in years. They were, I heard about them 20, 30 years ago, but are they still around? What are they doing?
They're still in business. They have multiple industries involved with them. There's something more than $1 billion operation annually. Many workers are involved, and they just do their business and don't make a big deal about it. My understanding of that, I hope in our trip this summer, Odile and I may be able to visit and see what's actually going on.
You're going to go see them, huh?
That would be nice.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd like to know more.
Who is that group you're talking about?
Mondrian. Explain it, Alan, because I know a little about it, but you sound like you know more.
Well, it began as a small cooperative in northeast Spain, in the Basque Country, that has a very independent view of itself, and it expanded their cooperative and with a view that the workers own the resources, and they gathered more resources and had a democratic organization of deciding what they do. And they've gotten more and more, the industries have diversified. The particulars, I don't know. But the last report I heard, it was that there were maybe 16 different industries involved in this, and over $1 billion of annual revenue going through it. So it's a pretty big operation, but it's another way. It's a small
Do
regional.
they manufacture things, or what do they do to make
Yeah,
their
they
living?
manufacture things. They make stuff.
Okay. Okay, here's somebody coming in to join us. All right. So, but we've lost all our Russians, both Andrei and Alexei have left.
I'm just back.
Oh, you did? Oh,
I had another parallel meeting, so I left you for a while, but I'm back.
Well, you've been
I-
gone long enough so that, but
I
in the time
sorry,
you've been gone, you.
sorry, I need to leave again. I have something urgent. Sorry, I'll maybe connect in a few minutes, but I should respond to something.
All right, because if you stay away 5 minutes, the whole nature of geopolitics in Eastern Europe will have changed. You something happened while you were out there? Okay, well, somebody came, I think Robert Reed said he came late and he wanted to know what you guys were thinking. And I think we have all heard what you're thinking, but I'm not sure that we have anybody with a theory about where things are going to go in Russia, or well, certainly in Ukraine. How are the Ukrainians taking this, by the way, Andrei? Andrei, where are you? Come back.
He had to leave.
Andrei left for a moment.
Oh, okay.
We have a new face among us.
Yes, we do. Nevedita Daskandu. Hello, Nevedita. How are you? Join us. Turn on your microphone and
Yeah, hi,
say hello.
everybody. Yeah, hi. So,
Yeah.
you were telling that anybody went to Russia or Ukraine recently, something like that, I heard.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you too.
Your query was that somebody recently went to Russia or Ukraine or something like that, you
We had
asked?
earlier both of these fellows have left, but Andrei Kamenshikov and Alexei Prokorenko are both Russians. And
Okay,
both are living outside Russia, but we were asking their analysis. So since you have spent time in Russia yourself.
No, I was there just recently.
Where are you?
So,
All right.
so that's why I wanted to reply for a conference.
Please bring us up to date for what you've experienced and what you think about the situation.
Well, about this situation,
Sure.
well, frankly speaking, I am a little confused whether this is orchestrated or this is a real, because a lot of views are coming that this is not real, this is an orchestrated, and this is a planned and kind of it's a kind of making things a little more confusing. So I would avoid to comment on this because I'm not clear myself, and I've been listening to a lot of views, Western views, Eastern views, Global South views. So that's why, and then the people from Russia, they are not actually viewing anything because that is restricted. You are pretty aware of that. So my friends and all are a little quiet on this because they said they themselves are not aware. They're listening from the TV and news. So that is reality is not really clear what is exactly and how the situation is now. That is, but what I wanted to mention that when I was there, like around 1.5 months back for a conference, I found that things are at least in Leningrad. In Petersburg. I still call it Leningrad. In St. Petersburg and in Moscow, things are pretty normal. And people, like local people, were just not much aware of things, what is happening, and not bothered. And even the taxi drivers, even the shopkeepers, whomever you feel that they can say something about the situation, they were very, very quiet. And people will say that, we are okay, so we don't have any problem and any issue. So I find situation in Russia is not drastically changed, or any change I could not see. And I felt it was normal, though I was there for a very short period of time because of the conference. I left early. And so I felt that things are, actually, I could not understand that anything is really going on. So that was quite surprising for me. And that's what I wanted to mention.
Now, when was it you were there?
Oh, I was there 2 months back.
2 months ago.
Back. Yeah, yeah.
And how long you were there?
I was there for 4 days. In both the places.
Okay.
2 days, like 1.5 day, and then left for Moscow, and then I was just for a short conference. I was supposed to go again next week, but that I will do online for the BRICS. I went there for the Indo-Pacific conference. There was a conference related to Indo-Pacific, and they called the specialist working on Indo-Pacific areas. So I spoke something different topic, that is on Indo-Pacific, how they're growing and what are their plans and how different countries are coming together. So that was totally a different topic also. And now I'll be talking on the BRICS. In between, I talked about India-Russia relations under the G20 summit. So that was also there in between. And then I am talking on the BRICS on 29th. So basically topics are very different topics. So not related to domestic politics or the things that is crisis going on, whatever it is. So that's how. And one thing, yes, definitely you all know that there is a restriction, so people are
tell me about
speaking freely.
These conferences that you've been going to, and the fact that you're giving talks. What are you talking about are these talks all related, or what are you working on that brings you to Russia?
Well, as you know that Eurasia is my subject of specialization.
Yes.
So I've been working with Russia for now almost 25 years there. And also I can speak, the Russian language. So that is easy for me. And I lived and worked and studied there. So that's how they call me. And I'm part of many organizations, in the sense I'm part of Valdai Group. I'm part of MGMO's one conference. Basically, I've been working with them since many years on different topics related to like multilateral organization, like Shanghai Cooperation Organization, then BRICS now, as well as on RIC. But I have books on Russia-India relations. And
but tell me about the Valdai. I'm fascinated by the Valdai group, because they seem to have a very
diverse.
Yes, Putin really loves them, because what kind of people are they in general? It's a group of people that get together in Russia and talk about Russia every year or so. And I don't know what you do in between. Do you have any ongoing activities?
Have. Oh, yes. It's a very old organization. And it's kind of a mixture of political diplomats, academic, military persons from different walks of life. They kind of invite these people to become part of their group, and they have a very vibrant group, in the sense they have a very good website. They have a very good, work they are doing related to different topics on Russia. Definitely is a link, but if you type my name, and you will see the work that I've done on different topics, say Shanghai Cooperation Organization, say BRICS, say Indo-Pacific, say Russia, India, China. Then there are a lot of topics that people work on, different topics. So I work mainly on these areas. But there are people also from Canada. And there are academics from Canada who go there regularly. And once in a year, a kind of Putin is invited, and he comes and interacts with these academics, diplomats, military personals, and they ask
My friend,
questions.
Mary Caldor, said she'd been invited to join, and she
Mm.
asked me what I thought of it, what kind of outfit they were. Are they all people who love Putin or not? And I couldn't answer her. I didn't know whether they were all people who love Putin or not. What do you think?
Actually, you have to love that country, definitely. And if you love that region, if you not love, at least you have to have some kind of an understanding. They are not inviting people offhand. That I am sure. They are inviting people. They are following their works. They are following their talks. They are following their lectures. And they are inviting, mind you, they are not inviting every and anybody. So that is, they know whom they are inviting. If they are inviting your friend, that means your friend is well aware of that country. Your friend must be having a good impression about that country. And yes,
Yes, but
they
she's
have.
she's not very favorable to Putin. That's the thing. She wondered what
Then-
she'd be getting into if she accepted.
Then I'm little not very sure, because here I've seen that people, of course, there are people who are critics, but then they are not doing critical analysis just without substance. They have good substance within themselves, and that is how they are probably invited. And if you see the group, it is I think more than 500 people or 200 people who are there. So they are all kind of working in different topics, and they are well established people in their own.
Yeah, I know.
ways.
It's an elite outfit. Robert Reed has raised his hand. Come on, Robert. What's up?
Yes, I'd like to ask Dr. Kundu a question. She
Okay.
said that 2 or 3 months ago when she was in Moscow, the average person in the street and the taxi drivers weren't much interested in a lot of what was going on politically and to do with Ukraine. What I'd like to ask Dr. Kundu now is, what do you think those taxi drivers and other people in Moscow are thinking over the events of the past 2 days? What about the events of the past 2 days? What's happening there?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for your question. You are very correct, as I mentioned in the beginning only, that though I have a lot of friends there and they are like well versed with the situation, but when I am kind of asking them about this particular situation, they are themselves not very clear, and that is what they are saying, that they have the confidence of their leader, and that is what I'm getting the idea. And they are not very clear what is exactly happening, and people are a little skeptical in sharing their views. That is what I have realized.
Okay. Very good. Well, now what else do we have on the agenda? People must have been doing other things. We've talked about California. We've talked a little bit about the Mondrian people in Spain. We've talked, let's see, what else? Peter Wadhams, you always have things of great importance. I think of all you kind of shook me up when you said that what we eat is more important than the black carbon falling on the ice. Because I have, for the last 6 months or a year, really had the conviction that you are working in the most important area for the future of the planet. And that is that if we don't save ice in the Arctic, we're done for. And people talking about extinction phenomena, that's the word I sometimes use. You're in the dark, by the way. I can't see your face because you're sitting in the dark. But if you want to speak, I'd like to know more about the warming of the Arctic. The last time I asked you about that, you said that there was something like a 10-degree increase in the water temperature of the surface of certain area of the North Atlantic or the Arctic Ocean. What's going on there? Is this something as worrisome as you had me scared? Should I remain terrified?
Yeah, well, so moderately terrified. Yes. There's the Arctic Ocean has been warming up this year far more rapidly than it's ever done before, and far more rapidly than any of the other changes which we thought of as being crucial, like, for instance, sea ice disappearing is a big crisis, because if we actually lose the sea ice, then we're going to be completely changing the energy balance of the planet. But the loss of sea ice seems to be occurring less rapidly than the overall change in the temperature of the Arctic Ocean. So the biggest, most rapid change seems to be that the water in the Arctic Ocean is warming up, and at an enormous rate, such that in the end, of course, that relates to a loss of sea ice, but it also, in a shorter term, it relates to a faster warming of the ocean itself, which means a faster change in all the things associated with that. So it's a major crisis, and if you look at some of the graphs of water temperature, you'll find them shooting up way beyond any level that they've ever had before. There's something really terrible going on in the Arctic.
What is your theory about what's causing this?
Well, I don't have a theory. For sea ice, it was simply that, you know, the climate was getting warmer, and so the sea ice was melting. But in this case, the warming of the ocean is far more rapid than you would expect or even be able to explain in terms of any physics which we know about. That the physics of ocean warming is now gone beyond what we know, and which is pretty frightening. Something is going on which is causing the planetary ocean to warm up very fast and give us some unexpected, unpredictable results.
Now, is this going to affect the circulation pattern, these currents that go around the planet in the ocean? The temperature has some bearing on that, doesn't it?
Yes, well, there's some changes going on in the pattern of ocean circulation, but at the moment it's the sheer magnitude of the warming that's more dominant.
And no, but if you don't have a theory, then there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. I mean,
well, make observations. That's what I've always spent my life.
How long's it been going on that it's been spiking in that way?
About 2 years.
Now, is it just a small area or a large part of the North Atlantic, or it's in the North Atlantic, not in the Arctic Ocean, right?
No, it's in the Arctic Ocean as well, and
Is it? Oh,
it's the whole Arctic Ocean that's warming up more rapidly, and not simply the Atlantic, although the Atlantic is also involved.
Oh, well, does anybody have a theory?
Well, actually, weirdly enough, not that I know of. All the people who that worked in this field who confidently claim to understand what's going on have all suddenly started to say, oh, this was all completely unexpected, which means it wasn't unexpected, but it was unexpected by them. So there is a sort of bafflement going on about why the warming of the Arctic Ocean should be going on so rapidly just at this time. It's not. There isn't a well accepted theory.
Well, that's scary. That it, I'd like to do some forums about it. Is there a group of people working on it that you could easily corral into having a conversation?
Well, I'm writing a paper about it at the moment with a guy from Australia, Graham Thompson. So he might be happy to come in with me and talk about it.
Well, but it doesn't sound very encouraging. Okay. All right. So what else is going on? Thank you. Yes. Hello, Bill.
Yeah, I would just like to add something that the rate of warming has shocked I think a lot of people who are in the planning stages, and with the speed with which everything is warming up, sea level rise is going to be increasing as well. And some of the islands out there in the Pacific they already have gone under, and more will go under. And I just look at around here in California. I live in Central California, okay, just south of San Francisco. And if some of the projections are correct, sea level rise is going to inundate so much around Silicon Valley here that we won't be able to get around.
How will that happen? Does it come in? Will it come in the bay, and then South Bay will get bigger and deeper and stuff?
Yep. Actually, all the way along the coast, and it's going to happen, globally. It's not just confined to here. I'm just using here as a model for what can happen elsewhere. Yeah, I'm not very optimistic, and like I said earlier, I'm thinking of my great grandkids, what kind of life they're going to have to face.
Well, I don't think it's that far in the future. I'm thinking my brother lives on Balboa Island. I don't know. It looks to me like Balboa Island is going to be underwater before long.
Yes.
In Newport Beach, that area.
Well, it's true that the rate of warming and the accompanying rate of sea level rise are now so great that we really have to concern ourselves with changes that are going on now, and major changes to how we can live now with this, rather than a few years' time or a couple of decades' time. It's one of the now things.
Yeah, well, I mean, now means, even if you start doing something now, it's going to take 5 years to get a project constructed and so on. I mean, I guess the quickest thing that could be done would be one of these things where they want to go up and shoot sulfur or something into the stratosphere. And I gather you could do that like this year if you wanted to, if you decided to, but that happens to be the most scary of the options. I mean, I've been looking at a whole lot of geoengineering proposals, and that one puts me off, because once you squirt that stuff into the stratosphere, you can't bring it back, you know. I don't mind doing stuff, you know, experimentally. For example, brightening the clouds, spraying seawater up and see if you can make the clouds whiter and reflect more light. Because if you don't like what you're doing or you have some unexpected effect, you can stop within a week or so, and then it's, you know, the effects are all gone. But people want to do some weird things like put pieces of aluminum foil up out in space so that it, you know, little flitters or something. I've heard of that. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, a lot of really peculiar things that you couldn't undo. And but you know, but at least the blessing is for that sulfur thing. And maybe I guess some people say, well, it isn't just sulfur. You could use chalk or I don't know what else. But at least you could do it quickly. I think, you know, if they wanted to do it in a couple of months, they could get some planes and you know, fly around, you know, dumping sulfur out the window.
Yes, well, I'm familiar with what you've been doing with marine cloud brightening, and you know, what are the different ways of trying to bring back the Arctic ice as a project that Pugwash has been concerning itself with. The thing is, all of these techniques are now becoming more urgent, that it's not a question anymore of thinking, in 5 years' time we can get sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere in a way that will save us. It's everything that you need, that you think might do the job, has to be tried now. So we're really having a world where we can't wait. We don't have the time to take it easy.
Well, even the marine cloud brightening, that I think would take 5 years to get it going, even experimentally. And I'm, you know, that's one that I would like to believe in. I must say that the disputes that took place, I mean, they were friendly disputes, but the scientists who were talking about it didn't all see things the same way. So it made me think they're not ready. I would love to go to the Canadian government and say, let's set up a station in Resolute or Alert or someplace up there and spray some salt water into the clouds. But it didn't look to me like those guys were on the same page, or would. Some of them thought that would be the worst place to try to do it. You should go to the equator or someplace.
Well, I guess the problem is you have to decide where you want to go and then go there. There isn't the option now of kind of pondering over alternatives endlessly and then thinking about what might be the best thing to try. You have to just do it.
Do something, anything, yeah. Don't just stand there, do something.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. Andre, are you back? Yes, tell us. You keep slipping out to have a drink or something. What are you doing?
No, I had two parallel things going on, so I'm back now.
Okay. Now you've been traveling. How long have you been back in Kyiv? Because when I tried to reach you for, it looked like about 2 months, you were all over Central Asia and in Georgia and I don't know where else.
Yeah, I was on the road a lot.
Tell us about what you were trying to do and how successful you were and what you think the prospects are for really doing it big time.
Okay, well, my goal of my travel was specifically to get to understand, to know the what I call the new Russian diaspora in different countries. I mean, people, Russian citizens that left their country because of the war in Ukraine. Because obviously there are lots of Russians, for example, that live in European countries for many other reasons, or like in Germany, there's a large Russian speaking community. Many people who left maybe 20 years ago, and they're German citizens, but their first language is Russian, and so they there's still but this is different. The new wave of people are people that specifically left because of the war. And so I wanted to see who these people are, and to understand whether they are interested in effectively communicating with their friends, relatives, various acquaintances that who remained in the country, and to whether they're ready to communicate and to speak about sensitive issues, including obviously the war. And so that was it was like a kind of I called it an individual research project to see if the Russian diaspora can be effectively engaged in some kind of initiatives that would lead to better communication and better understanding of people, ordinary people in Russia, of what's going on. The problem that I see today is that while there are lots of independent Russian language media sources on the internet, and someone, if he's liberal-minded or open-minded, just and wants to get, alternative information to what the government propaganda tells them, living in Russia, he can do that. And there are millions and millions and millions of people that do listen to our alternative media sources, but they are in a minority. The majority does not make this extra effort to hear information that contradicts what they hear on TV and radio every day.
Mhm.
And to reach this majority, we need to find new ways, new channels to communicate with them. Because the channels that exist today, they simply do not reach outside of this sizable, but still, minority, sometimes people call it the liberal bubble, maybe it's 15, 20 million people in Russia, but it's still obviously a minority of people who, do listen to all these alternative sources. So my idea was that something that people who left and who left recently, who still have lots of contacts, lots of people that they want to communicate with, could do is to speak, just to openly speak about what's going on with their friends and relatives in the country. And as they left, they're in a safer position, because obviously, doing something like that when you're in Russia will immediately put you in jeopardy. But, when you're, more or less presumably out of the reach of Russian authorities, it's not, again, we're not speaking about creating a separate media channels, but we're speaking about at least using the potential for person-to-person communication. And so I met with people in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Georgia, Poland, Lithuania, Germany, to basically see how this goes. And I learned a few things. First of all, I saw that yes, there is a need for people who recently left. There's a desire for them to communicate, and there's a desire to be better understood. Sometimes it's a very important issue for people because, for example, they want their parents, their close relatives, close friends, not to look at them as traitors to their country, in these difficult times. And so,
By the way, what percentage of them say that their families do look at them as traitors?
I can't give you any percentage points because, I didn't meet that many people, and the people that I met, again, it wasn't maybe necessarily a random You know, some groups were more random. Some groups were like already people that had a record of political activism and left not just because of the war, but also because of all the repressive new laws and things like that. So, for example, many women's groups that I met, some of women active gender activists, they are not usually in under the immediate threat of being mobilized, even though some are, especially medical personnel. But in most cases, they don't
Yeah,
feel
I believe they can draft women as nurses or physicians, right?
In some cases, yes, there have been some cases, but overall, of course, most of the people that left are men, and sometimes they came with families, with their wives, children, and so forth. So I can't give you percentages, but I can tell you that I heard stories from one side to the other, and one person would say, actually a woman it was that said that I'm afraid that my father will find out that I'm in Kazakhstan, because if he finds out, I'll become in his eyes, I'll become a traitor and all that. She's hiding from her own father where she's located.
Mhm.
Even though Kazakhstan is not really, seen in Russia as a hostile country, but still, and in the same meeting, we had a gathering of maybe 15 or 20 people. Another young man said, I'm an IT guy. I haven't been watching news, politics at all. And until I got a call from my mother that said, you need to leave urgently, because Putin started mobilizing. And he was obviously, in a group that was under risk of mobilization. So every story is individual, but you do get you do see that this issue of communicating is something that's important for people. It's probably, let's be honest, not number one on their list of concerns, because they move to a new country. They need to get documents. They need to have legal right to stay. They need to find a job. They need to find a place to live. And there's all these other urgent issues that they have to deal with. But, maybe number 5, number 6, number 7, but this issue of communicating with those who stayed is there. It's on this list of concern, even though it's certainly not on the very top of it. Usually, in some cases, it might be on the top concern.
Mhm.
And so, yes, I believe that there is a potential to work in this direction.
What would you do? How would you work? Would you like to organize, say, a Zoom meeting that everybody can join and talk, or what would you do?
What I hope to do right now, and I do have a proposal with Nonviolence International, we made a proposal for that, is to start by simply setting up formats where a certain group, maybe 10, 15 people in a certain location, could start to regularly meet offline, because offline meetings are much more effective, and people get much more from it and want to if they're much more effective. So offline, where they would discuss communication issues, where they would get some training modules would be involved, and but they would not only learn from professionals, but they will also learn a lot from each other's experience. And what I want to get is, I want to get these, you can't call it communication clubs. You can call it dialogue about dialogue groups, where people that are interested in the topic would meet regularly. The key is that they meet regularly, that they develop a certain, identity, and they, as they learn from each other or from relevant specialists, they start to experience, they try to apply what they learned in their communication with people inside the country. This is the first phase that I would like to try out in basically, in the coming months.
So that's not online, that's face to face in person.
I hope that it would be possible to set up these face-to-face meetings, offline meetings.
Mm.
However, I believe that to make it effective, every offline meeting, there probably would be people joining online as well. Because, for example, if someone that can make a lecture about effective communication or share interesting experiences, but obviously can't be physically in different places, he would join online. If I'm able to get these things going, my goal is to be able to join at least 2 offline meetings, to join offline at least 2 meetings in every location where this happens, and then I could join online, because obviously different countries, I can't be in different locations at the same time. So
Nivedita has something to say. We're getting toward the end.
Yeah.
At 4 o'clock.
I just have one question. I was not very clear. If this people who were leaving the country, they are mainly the Russian-speaking people from the Ukraine, or is it from the Russian-speaking? I mean, Russians from the Russian Federation, and are they moving to their near abroad countries like Central Asia and other Eurasian region, or they are also moving to the other nations like European nations or the North America? So that was just not very clear. So if you could just highlight on that. Thank you.
These are Russian citizens of different ethnic background, but Russian citizens, people that live who are citizens of Russia. And yes, very many of them left to nearby countries. And every story is different. In every country, the regulations, who can enter, who can stay for how long, and all this, it is different. It changes. So also, there are 2 sets of documents that Russian citizens have. There's basically 2 passports. One everybody has, but it's mainly used just internally, and there are like only a few countries that Russians can go to with this document. To go to most countries, you need to apply for what is called a travel passport or a Russian foreign passport. Basically, it's a document that is used and to get to most other places. Visas, some countries require visas, sometimes some don't. So it's very difficult. And as a result, because the regulations and the situation in different countries is very different, you get also different groups of people who end up in one or another country. If you don't have, for example, this passport that you need to travel to most countries in the world, then you can only go to Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan. Basically, there are only 4 countries. So people end up there. People that do have documents, they can go to other places. European countries, they are not very welcoming to Russians that are trying to avoid being drafted. Unfortunately, they all, to a greater or lesser extent, are making it very difficult for Russians to obtain documents, visas, and be able to cross their borders. In some cases, it's just, there's almost no chance. In some cases, they do provide, some European countries provide humanitarian visas to those Russians like Alexei, who was on our meeting today, who have a proved record of political activists, who can prove that they are, they're genuine political refugees because of their position. But very many people who left the country after the war began, or especially after Putin started mobilizing people, they weren't necessarily very active previously. Or even if they were, they never really, kept a good record of that. It's hard for them to prove that they are seen, as basically just ordinary people that for one or another reason left. And again, regulations in different countries are different, the policies are very different. Some are more welcoming, some are less welcoming. So it's while I believe that there is space to work in most countries, there's also great differences in what people we can work with. How do we approach? Like in Georgia, people are usually much more. The average Russians that are in Georgia are much more active in social. Have a track record of social activity, political activity, and so forth. In Kazakhstan, they don't. So.
And that's because of the situation in Kazakhstan and Georgia, not differences in the type of people who go to those places.
It happens naturally because, people that go to Georgia, maybe, first of all, they need to have this travel passport. So, 80%, 70 maybe, or 80% of Russians don't even have that. And it's a document that needs to be renewed every 5 or 10 years and so forth. So, and it's a fairly long bureaucratic procedure to obtain it. So, again, so automatically you get people that have this document, probably are people that are on average better off, that traveled previously. Maybe they just used it to go to vacation in Turkey or Egypt, but at least they're usually their income level is usually above average. Their knowledge of the world is above average, because they had previously traveled to other countries, and they have that in their background. Also, many Russian political activists moved to Georgia, and many of the people that I met there, usually just about all of them had some. These were young people, but they had some degree of social or political activism. In Kazakhstan, it's very different. Kazakhstan has a longest border with Russia. It's a land border. Georgia also has a land border, but it's across the mountains, and basically there's one major highway that goes over a mountain pass. So it's quite a ordeal just to get there physically. But in Kazakhstan, many people just came there. It was the first time they left the country, and they didn't know what to do. And many returned. Many stayed for a while, but they ran out of money and they had to return because they couldn't get documents that would allow them to stay longer, and so on. So it's.
Well, listen, you told me that there were about 40, did you say, guys that you knew of who were in imminent risk, or at least real risk, of being extradited back to Russia, where they'd be put in prison.
I spoke to colleagues in human rights organization in Kazakhstan, Kazakh organizations who have been working on specific cases. These are people who basically either left illegally according to Russian laws, like if they're, military, they shouldn't have the right to leave without special permission. Or I don't know all the, and these are also people that usually ended up in places where, the authorities in Kazakhstan, they tolerate people usually. They're not, let's say, they're not really actively searching for them and sending them back, but they're not providing people with the legal status that they need to stay in the country. So you
put me in touch with one, or somehow he got to me through you, and we had quite an interaction. He has a friend, his best friend lives in Halifax, and so on. And but he eventually got a visa, a tourist visa to Canada. So he's doing fine. But I'm thinking of putting on another show. I did a talk show with Bob Ray at the UN. Now, what I asked him for was, would he go on with you and Konstantin Samoylov and Alexei and this fellow, Volodya, I don't know, Kozlov or something, the fellow that you put me in touch with in Kazakhstan. And would he go on and talk about their plight? And he was eager to do that, but he said, I have to get approval from Ottawa. Well, the person making the negotiations for him didn't realize that there would be these Russians involved. So she got the permission for Olivia and me, Olivia Ward and me, to interview Bob Ray, and we did, but they did not give permission for you or any of these other guys to be on the show. So I want to put on another show with somebody from Amnesty International. I haven't been able to get some of the other people that I wanted, but I do think that it's important to have a conversation about the predicament that people are in who left the country and are in danger of being sent back to Russia, where they'll be treated badly, if not worse than that, badly. So you're up for that, I assume, if I can get it set up, right?
Yeah, I just should say that I didn't, my focus was on another issue. So I know about this problem, but I didn't look into specific cases. I just met with, I knew some from years ago. I knew some human rights activists in Kazakhstan, so I got in touch with them and discussed, with them how they see, the Russian diaspora and all that. And they mentioned these cases that they were working on, trying to protect people from being deported, or, there were a few cases where people were actually in jail in these countries, which was still better than they be deported. If you are considered a deserter today from the Russian military, especially, if you're a former officer or acting officer of the Russian, security service, and you decide to defect, then even in a jail in Kazakhstan is probably being a better option than going back to Russia. But it's not something that we can.
Okay, well, thank you for this, and it's fascinating and deplorable, but our time is over. We've run over by 9 minutes. So I hope that I can fix whatever was wrong with that recording. I hope we haven't lost everything. So thank you, everybody. And I'll see you in a month, the end of the last Sunday in July. Okay.